Hey guys, today we're going to go over the proper way to set up all your dies to load 9mm. Right here we've got the decapping and sizing die. You can tell by the decapping pin, and it will also say what it is on the die itself. The next one is going to be the powder pass-through die, which this one happens to be made by Lee. It's just going to be a little bit easier for us to set up and use on this machine, since we're treating this machine as a single stage. The next one, this is actually a Hornady setup. It's a micrometer adjustment, so you can make fine-tune adjustments on the fly once the die is already locked down. And then finally, this is just your Dillon crimp die that will go in station 4. So we'll go ahead and get started. It's a pretty simple process. So you'll have station 1, station 2, station 3, and station 4. So station 1 is going to be your sizing and decapping. Then it's going to go over to your powder die. Thirdly, it's going to go to your bullet seating. And then finally, you'll have your crimp. So to set your first die, you always want to make sure that you have the lock nut backed off out of the way. Go ahead and run the handle down, which will bring your shell plate up to its highest position. We're just going to put the die in. And we're just going to screw it all the way down until you feel it touch the shell plate. You can look over on the side and see that it's hitting the top of the shell plate, as well as you'll feel that resistance. Once you feel that, we'll just back off like a quarter turn. So you always want to make sure to pay attention where your die is at, keeping in mind that your die is one piece and this lock nut is separate. So figure out where your die is at, make note of it, and then you just want to back off a quarter turn. So all we're doing is backing it off just a touch so that it's not touching the shell plate. Being that these are carbide dies, that carbide ring inside can crack and break if it's touching the shell plate, and then the shell plate has too much pressure on it. So now that we've backed it off a quarter, just hold the die, and you want to tighten that lock nut down. Just give it a nice turn. It's locked down. That die is set. Moving on to station 2, we're going to use the powder through die. Just go ahead, again, you want to back that lock nut off all the way just to get it out of the way so you're not having to mess with it. And you just want to go ahead and screw this down. Okay, so screw it down most of the way. Again, it's not going to hit. So now we can go ahead and take our piece of brass. This is just a 9mm. It's been shot, cleaned, ready to go. So we're going to take it, we're going to slide it into station 1 over here. We're going to run it down, push the handle all the way down. At the same time, you'd hear the decapping pin going off, and then this is spring loaded to help kick the primer out. Get the tray for the primer so it doesn't fall on the floor. And as you run it down, it's going to drop that primer out. So if I take that out now, it's deprimed it and it's sized it and it's ready to go. Just to get it ready for the powder, we can go ahead and take a spent primer. And we're just going to put it in backwards just to fill that up. And then that'll give us a smooth surface on the inside so that when we do go to put powder in, you don't have to worry about any getting stuck actually inside the primer anvil. You don't have to do this, but it's just something that we do. So we can go ahead and slide that over in there. Slide it in there, and then you're just going to push the handle forward and seat the primer. So now that's backwards. But when we go to use powder and put it in and check our charges and all that, it just makes it a little bit more consistent. So I'll go ahead and slide it back in station 1. I'm going to go ahead and advance it to station 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up this die. So we'll go ahead and run the handle all the way down. Continue to screw this die down till you feel it touch. So right now it's touching the top of that. But being that this is a powder through die and it also bells your case, now we need it to actually bell the case. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just give it like one full turn to see where that puts us. There's a half and there's a 1. Then again, just hold your die as you tighten down the lock nut. I'm just going to do this finger tight just to hold it in place while we're messing with it to see how much it bells it. So go ahead and run the handle back down. You'll feel just a touch of resistance. Go ahead and pull this pin out. And you can kind of run your finger over it. One turn, you're not really going to feel too much. So we'll go ahead and back that off. We'll go one more turn. And that's tight. Go ahead and run it through again. Feel a little bit more resistance. And this time, if you actually run your finger up, now you're going to feel just a little bit of a lip on there. So what we'll do is we'll take, this is the 147 grain bullet that we're going to be using. It's a berry or extreme bullet. And as you can see, it just drops in there enough so that it doesn't fall over. It just holds it in place. You don't want to overdo this because you're just working the brass more than you need to. You just want to have enough just so that bullet drops in. Just so it sits there. When you set it in there, it'll hold it in place once we get over here to the bullet seating station. So now that is properly set up. So you can just lock that down. And actually there's an O-ring in there, so whether you do it by hand right now, I'm just going to do it by hand for this purpose, but ultimately if you're setting this up completely and you're going to be loading on it continuously, you want to go ahead and lock that down with a tool. Alright, so now we've got this die set up. Now we're going to go over and do the bullet seating die. But in this case, we're actually going to skip this station for right now, and we're going to come back to it, and I'll show you why here in just a second. What we're going to do is we're going to take the crimp die, and we're going to do that one next. The reason why is if we set the bullet seating, we're not going to know where the top of the case is to verify our crimp. It'll just take a lot longer to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to station 4 and we're going to find where the top of this case is, and then we can adjust our crimp to know about where we're at, and then we can fine-tune it once we get station 3 set up with the bullet seating. So go ahead and slide that back in there, put the pins back. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and advance it to station 4. I'm going to run the handle all the way down, and then I'm just going to screw this die down until I feel it touch the top of the case. Okay, right there, that's touching the top of the case. So at that point, it's touching the top of the case, but it's not actually doing anything. So again, hold that lock nut so it stays out of the way. And let's go ahead and give this, let's just say 1 full turn. There's a half. And there's 1. And we'll just go ahead and, again, finger tight this just so that it kind of holds it in place for right now. So now we'll go ahead and we'll back up to station 3. Now this one's set up roughly where we need it. So we're going to take our bullet seating we're just going to go back that off. We're going to go ahead and screw this in. One thing you want to watch out for is to make sure you don't run it down too far and hit the shell plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set this bullet in place. Then we're going to run the handle down, running that bullet up into the die. So now we're just going to screw this die down until we feel it touch the top of the bullet. And then what we also need to make sure to do is back this micrometer off. Let's just back it off to there. It's at like the number 4 setting. This is how we're going to do our final adjustment to get the bullet down to the seating depth that we need. But for right now, we're going to do the mass adjust. So just hold on to this, screw this down. Okay, right there, I feel it touching the top of the bullet. So anywhere in this area, as long as it's touching, you still want to make sure that you can see these numbers. Go ahead and screw that lock nut down. Again, for this, I'm just going to do it hand tight because we're only setting them up and doing 1 or 2 rounds, so it's not going to be a big deal. Alright, so now it's just touching the top of the bullet. So now what we want to do is we're going to screw this down. That's 1 full turn. You'll be able to see the 0 on here in your adjustments. That was 2 full turns. So what I'm going to do is take the calipers, and what we need is 1.160. So I'm going to go to 1.160. 1.160. So now that we've screwed this down some, we're going to go ahead and run the handle down. You'll feel just a little bit of resistance. Go ahead and pull that pin out. We'll leave that out for the time being. And we'll go ahead and put that in there, and we'll see that we're still really long. So let's do another 1, 2 full turns. Run the handle down. I feel a little bit more resistance there. Now in that case, we went too far. We're at 1.14. We need to be at 1.16. So that's a good example. The first adjustment, you can go a couple of turns and then you want to start going slower, because now we have to go pull this bullet. So we'll go ahead and set that one aside. I'm going to get another one and another bullet. So we're going to go ahead and back this off. Let's go 1, let's go 1.5 back. We go ahead and go through this steps again. I'm not going to put a primer in this one because there's really no point. We're just setting up the overall lengths. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and set this back on there. We're at 1.212. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to 1.16. And now we're just going to do small adjustments. Still too long. Do another 2. Still too long, but it's getting close, so let's do 1. And we're really close. So let's do a half. Down. And there we go. Just barely scooting through there. So as you can see, we did a couple major adjustments right off the get-go just to seat the bullet down in there. And then I think we did 1, and then a half, and then a quarter. You'll see on here there's a 2, there's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as we got closer, I would just go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1.5, 1 1/4, so on and so forth, as it got closer, so that I didn't go too far. So now we've got the 1.160. So now this die is set up. We're going to run it over to the crimping die. We're going to run it through, run it down. And then this is kind of, you can just do it by feel. You can run your finger down it and you'll feel just a little bit of a lip. So we know that we need to put more. And you can also hold it up to the light and you'll be able to see when it's getting enough crimp on it. So we'll go ahead and back this, again holding the die, back the lock nut off a little bit, and let's give it one more full turn. Again, hold the die, tighten the lock nut down, finger tight, and then let's run it through again. Again, you can just run your finger over it and you'll feel that that lip is starting to go away. Again, just hold it up to the light. And we could probably just do a little bit more. Let me go ahead and I'm going to do another half turn. Go ahead and put it in there. And I could tell just by the way it crimped that it actually got a pretty good crimp on there now. And if you hold it up to the light, you'll actually see where it's tapered in now towards the bullet. And if you run your finger over it, you'll see that it's a lot smoother. The other thing that you want to look for, which is a very good indicator of how much crimp you have on it, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the camera, but holding it under the light, you'll see from about right there up to the top of the brass, you'll see a brighter ring around it. So it'll be brighter, that top little piece, than the rest of the brass. And that'll show you that the crimp die actually came down on it and crimped it right there and where it stopped. So you only want to have about that much. Otherwise you can get too much crimp on there and it's going to build up pressure when you go to shoot it. Again, it's just kind of trial and error, but you can run your finger over it and see that that's pretty much perfect. And that is all there is to setting up your dies.